Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of Bring It On. My name is Bob Hayes and I'm going to be your show host for today's show. I have Eric Dresser with me, who is the Executive Director at Whitman Hanson Community Access. Eric, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's good to have you here today.
I'm very happy to be here, especially in this beautiful location.
Isn't it amazing? Today, ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't noticed, we're here at the Colebrook Boulevard, which is between Essex Street and South Avenue. Years and years ago, many years ago, back in the 70s and 80s, this place was a very wide open, you could drive cars down here. In fact, it was a local parking spot, so to speak. So it has a lot of history in the town of Whitman. It's great to be here. It's great to be outside doing this shoot. It's something different. It's moving forward with what Whitman Hanson Community Access is all about. But first, Eric, give us a little background about you yourself, your history, what you did and what made you come to Whitman Hanson Community Access.
Yeah, well, I've been here since January, so about 8 months at this time. And, I came down here after having been the founding executive director of Hingham Community Access and Media. So we started things there in about 2011, and I was there for 5 years, built the initial staffing, policies and procedures, facility, and then, I saw an opportunity to do kind of take WHCA to the next chapter with things here. Steve Roy, my predecessor, had been here for a number of years and had done a lot of great things in building the facilities here. And I knew that they were looking to do more and to start expanding the program and doing some new building here in Whitman and Hanson. And I was excited for that opportunity.
Where do you see the future of Whitman Hanson Community Access? You jumped right into that. It was a question that I was going to ask you down the road, but I'm glad that you did. Community access channels seem to be up and coming more and more and more with today's media and what goes on in the towns and the need for information and in that cell phone thing that we have and the iPad. And where do you see it? How do you see it going? Where do you see it in its future?
Well, I think video is as important now as it's ever been, if not perhaps more. I went over on my data plan on my cell phone this month because of the videos that are auto-playing on Facebook. And so if we can help and create a more professional version of those videos to get, sort of well thought out video and statements out there for folks, because of course we're all walking around with cameras in our pockets now, and that's great. We can document things in ways that we never have before, but to be informed about how to tell a story well and how to shoot it well and how to make it display well, sound well, that's, again, as important now as it's ever been. And so I think that, places like WHCA have a big role in that, in informing and educating individuals to use that technology better, and then providing that to folks that maybe don't carry that studio around in their pocket or want to do something more.
That's great. And you're talking about that again, we're leading right into the next part of the question that I was going to ask. Are you looking for people to do shows? What's your thought? How do you get the community involved and what's your plan on that?
Yeah, we're definitely looking to involve people in the productions that we're doing. But not just in the productions that we're doing. We want people to bring ideas to the table that they might have of content that they'd like to generate, or perhaps they're involved with a nonprofit group or something in town or one of the towns, and they want to bring some publicity to that. We want to encourage all of those things. And so we're building, we're getting the equipment together to be available for those folks. Of course, we already have some now. We're just looking at how we can bolster that and make some updates there. And then we're making the training program so that folks know how to use that equipment professionally, again, to get good look and sound out of what they're creating. And then we're actually doing a pretty significant revamp at our facility, at our studio on South Ave in Whitman, to bring in editing machines that will actually be able to be used by folks that come in. So you'll be able to come in, take out a camera, do some filming either in the studio or around town, and then bring that back and put it together on the computer to tell your story, all the while being able to tap a member of the staff on the shoulder and ask them questions about how to do something or perhaps how to tell that story. So just, putting that power into people's hands, because as a staff, there's about half a dozen of us, but as a community, there's so many more. And what we're able to do by empowering other members of the community to produce is a lot more than we'd be able to do just as the half dozen of us.
So basically, Whitman Hanson Community Access is reaching out to community members and saying, come on down, come here, film, give us your ideas, we're going to help you. It sounds like not only is it a community access channel, but it sounds like it's got its own educational value.
Yeah, that's true. And one of the first orders of business that I did when I came in back in January was to kind of do a revamp to our website. I'd like to try to make an easy funnel for folks so that when they want to engage with us and connect with us, they can instantly find a place to learn more about what we do, maybe fill out some web forms or something like that to let us know they're interested, how we can get in touch with them, and then plug them in so that, yes, they can plug right into the program, come into our facility. That we don't want to really just necessarily be a studio per se going forward. We want to really make it into a community media center that is essentially going to provide any of the services that a community center would, but adding the media on top of that so that people can do a lot more with, with getting the word out about what they're interested in or what they're trying to promote.
How do they get to the website?
Well, the website's address is WHCATV.org. So you can just type that right into the address bar, or if you want to Google Whitman Hanson Community Access. And then we've also had some good conversations with folks in town halls in the two towns to make sure that there's some linking from their sites as well.
Okay, so it's not really just to do shows like I do or to do painting. I think Danielle, I believe, does painting. It's to do, it could be to do a youth show, it could be to do baseball game, it could be football game. There's endless possibilities.
It could be that.
Like.
It could be, somebody from the scouting program wants to come down and bring some recognition to what they're doing. If they're looking to increase their numbers of involvement with the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts. It could be that there's an event happening at the VFW hall, and it's that's where the event is happening, is in the hall, but it's some club that you're involved with and you want to bring some coverage to that. I also happen to be a ham radio operator, and we kind of hooked up this year with the Whitman Amateur Radio Club, and we're able to bring some publicity to them through one of their big events that happens in the spring and kind of spring, summer each year. So it's providing opportunities like that to get the word out and to really strengthen community through media.
Do you see it as something like, because I know, how people get a little bashful about coming down, and especially when they're learning and they're trying to learn how to run one of these cameras or all this equipment. I mean, you and I have had the discussion about, I look at it and it's easy for me to come sit here and you guys just put a mic on me and I do what I have to do. But to set up the equipment, to film the event, do they get some sort of training? How does that work?
Well, they'll either get training or that's where the staff will get involved. Depending of the scope of the production, if it's just a matter of setting up a basic camera out in the field, that might be easy. But if we're doing a complex setup such as this production where we're sitting at here with multiple cameras and everything that's involved with that, that's where the staff involvement would come in. It could be in a training capacity, or it could be in sort of an assisting capacity. So yeah, absolutely, those tools are all there for.
So all of those parts and all the functions, you can make as much of it as you want or as little of it as you want, it sounds like to me.
That's completely correct.
And it's going to have an educational piece backgrounding it. I know we talked about future and involvement in media and the different types of shoots that you're going to do. Do you see more of this outside stuff? I know that last year we did some football games and we did some basketball games and people seem to like that. Do you see student involvement through the high school, through Whitman Hanson Regional School District?
We've got a beautiful production truck that's actually backing this production today as we sit out here on the boulevard, as you pointed out. And that's great. And we want to involve people to come in and use the equipment in there and sort of bring people in probably an observing and shadowing type of capacity at first, and then eventually, yes, to let them operate the cameras and help us string the cables and even perhaps perform the switching in the truck, all with the oversight, of members of the staff probably as part of that. And it would involve people from the schools. It could involve, but that's not to say you have to be under 18 to be involved. It could really be anyone. I like to think that we serve from age 8 to age 80, and probably on either side of that as well. So anybody can come down and get involved, and you bring up the schools, and I think that that's a great avenue. In Hingham, we actually had built a very successful educational access partnership, which we're really excited about bringing an idea like that down here to Whitman Hanson. There's a wonderful school district here, and obviously there's a great television program within that as well that we're really excited about trying to connect with and use that as a system to bring folks in who have interest in this and want to kind of take it to the next step. And they maybe don't want to stop production when they reach their senior year. They'd like to stay involved.
It seems as though in different aspects of this thing, when you talk about 8 to 80, we could have someone from a senior community come up and want to film their events and use that and maybe learn in that. So any seniors or anyone that's listening to today's show, one of the reasons we're doing this is to get out to the public how much more Whitman Hanson Community Access has to give to the towns of Whitman and Hanson. Am I correct?
That's it. I mean, it's really easy to scale what we offer, and it's really easy to take advantage of. And that's why we hope that with the new website and our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, that people will engage with us, reach out, and learn more about how they can get involved. Because I've said in the past, when describing what it is that places like WHCA do, we're kind of marketing a piece of paper. I mean, it could have a drawing on it, it could have a story on it, it could have a poem on it. It is a blank slate. You can make with it whatever you will. And we're going to provide the training and the materials needed to make that come into fruition.
Well, as you can see, it's pretty laid back, ladies and gentlemen. I know Kevin Tocci got me involved doing shows a few years ago, and the first few that I did, I was very, very nervous and apprehensive, and you might say the wrong thing. This is what community's about. Good communities are made up of good volunteers. So get engaged. Come down to the studio. See what it has to offer. We're going to talk a little bit about the future of Whitman Hanson Community Access. I know I asked you, where do you see it going? But what's the end game?
Well, I think that's a moving target. Right now, as I look out in front of us, we've got to get more of our content to be of the quality and in the locations that people are watching. And that's changing. If you look at just the way that people are tuning in at home, they're tuning in now on their HD channels. So one of the problems that we face is that we're 800 channels away from the other channels that people are watching. If they're watching channel 804, 805, 807, we're down on channel 9. And there's a big number between there, and so you're not going to flip by it like you used to. And so that's why we're trying to ramp up things like social media and stuff like that, because we need to post the content there, because that's also where people are watching their content now. People are just as likely to watch local community content on Facebook or on YouTube as they are on cable, maybe even more so. So we have to look at how we're able to get our content there, and then as it goes there increasingly, we're largely funded through cable subscriber dollars that come into the cable subscribers, and then because of the agreements that these cable subscribers have with the communities through which their cables run, we're able to get those funds back to us. But as especially younger viewers' habits change and they start to engage through different means, not necessarily through cable, that actually impacts our funding, and it makes it more important for us to look at alternative ways that we can still have that financial support. Obviously, we need to make sure that we're still viewed as a community asset so that we have usership and interest in what we're doing. And so really a lot of our goals are kind of pointed in that direction, into how we can remain a community asset, remain with the times. And I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, I'd have been talking about HD, but now I'm talking about 4K. And I've been out to NAB in Las Vegas, the big conference for folks in this industry, and they're talking about 8K. So that's going to be a moving target, and the distribution means by which that gets to people. It was all cable in the 80s. And then we started to see the internet come on the scene, and we'll probably be looking at wireless and virtual reality in 10 years, and who knows. So it's just keeping a thumb on that pulse and keeping plugged into that. But that's where being a community media center comes in, and that's really a very broad description. And so it's it's able to sort of adapt to all these different medias and plug in and include those things in what we do.
You hit on Facebook and YouTube. Is there a way for a person that's at a computer or at an iPad to jump onto a Facebook site or jump on to a YouTube site and watch WHCA?
There is, and the easiest way to find those channels is probably just through our website. We've got some social media icons that are on there that you can click to find them. You could also, again, search Whitman Hanson Community Access, but our usernames on there are longer, so it wouldn't be like giving a nice short URL like WHCATV.org, which, as I say, is probably the fastest way to find and hook into YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and things like that. And we really encourage people not just to find them, but to follow them, engage, subscribe, whatever that might be. Because that's going to keep those stories coming to you in your news feed or in your email or wherever it is that you look for those community news stories.
If someone were going to go, and I'm asking this about the future, and look and see, like, when you go to a TV guide, you can look and go, okay, this TV program's on at 6, this one's at 6:30, this one's at 7. How does that play into with the viewership?
I could go on and on about that topic, so stop me if I go too long. That's a challenge that we face. As HD programming that folks are used to watching is a challenge for us, so too is electronic programming guide. And we're working on that. I also serve on the board of directors for Mass Access, which is a professional trade and advocacy group for places like WHCA. So we're working on legislation that may possibly bring things like that to the playing field for us so that people will know what they're watching or what's coming next or when they can expect to see that program that they care about. In the meantime, the best thing that we can do is try to either overlay that information onto the screen so we can put it on the bulletin boards that airs between programming. We can put something on the screen that says, you know, you are currently watching this. And then we have a programming guide that's on our website. And so we're aware that it's a bit of a lane change and folks have to check the website to see what's playing on their television. But that's also why we're trying to build in more of a video on demand type of experience into the web type experience for people.
Is it the licensing that's holding that back, or is it just a giant undertaking? Because I have people ask me, they'll say, Bob, what time is your show on? And I'll say, yeah, it's 7 or 9 or whatever, and they seem to want to be able to look, pinpoint, like,
absolutely.
Well, TV has exposed them to that easy guide,
yes.
And then they just flip through.
Set your DVR.
Yeah, 100 channels,
right.
and you know, they go to it, and
right.
I think that may be hand-holding this a little bit.
You know, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that, for better or worse, and I would say worse, some of the cable providers that while we get the funding through them, they're not always happy partners in that. And they're not necessarily looking to make that upgrade in infrastructure for Whitman, for Hanson, for Abington, for Rockland. They'd have to do it on a town-by-town basis. So there's some technical restraints that they will cite as being the challenges that stop them from doing that because of the way their systems work, and the programming that they're saying is playing for Whitman may not be the same as the programming that's playing in Brockton or in Abington. And so those are challenges that, you know, from a technical side. And then there's just the expense of it, you know, that they're going to have to install that infrastructure in each of these locations. You know, they don't really disclose their full playbook to us, but we certainly feel the effects of it, which is that we can't see the content that's playing on the channel on the TV, which is where you want to look for it. So we've tried to build it in and make it available as best we can, like I say, through the website, and that's available as we speak. So you can go to the website now and see what's playing there.
Well, that's a giant tool to help a lot of people, because it's very difficult if you are interested in seeing Painting with Danielle,
yeah,
but you don't want to see Bring It On, but you've got to start watching through the shows to figure out
right.
who's where, what.
And we're also, we're making some technological upgrades to some of our equipment. So we'll see an increase and an improvement in the quantity and quality of programming on our channels because of that new infrastructure that we're putting in. It will also help us in working towards that HD. We'll still be limited in the fact that our cable provider is only going to provide us with a standard definition connection, but we can produce more of that content in HD. And ultimately, as I said, if our programming is available on the internet and we don't have that restriction, we'll actually see that programming available at higher qualities online. So we're trying to work around some of those challenges that we're faced with. And as I say, with the changing methods by which people tune into our content, we're hoping that becomes less and less of an issue, even if they're not necessarily cooperating as much as we wish they would.
Now, town-to-town basis, because these are all questions, and this is wonderful information for people that might be viewing to understand better how the providers work. Are the same providers that are WHCA, which is Whitman and Hanson, in Abington? Is it the same cable company, so to speak?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't necessarily answer that on a town-by-town basis. I will say it does vary from town to town. Some towns have some competition. For example, I came here out of Hingham, as we discussed, and we had Verizon and Comcast. They were one of the FiOS towns. From what I understand, Verizon has said they're through building out the FiOS platform. I don't quite know what their level of investment in that platform is at this point, but here in Whitman Hanson, we've got Comcast, that is the cable company. There's, of course, satellite options and other options that are out there, but you can only watch WHCA through Comcast or through these other online methods that I mentioned.
That's kind of where I was going with it. Like, you couldn't see it if you're in another town, and lots of times people will say, oh, I was in Hanson and I wanted to see something that went on in Abington, right, and you can't cross over it. Is there a YouTube site, or is there any way for people to do? Because obviously the better viewership that these cable channels get, the more support that they're going to get from the towns.
Right.
The more difficulty that people have in today's world, If it's not, I mean, how many times you been somewhere and the clicker's not working and people are going, wow, the clicker, I can't believe it, the clicker's not working.
Get out of my seat?
Yeah, the TV's broke, we lost it. You know, it happens in my house. My grandson and the kids were playing with the clicker and they lost it and nobody could figure out how to make that TV work.
Right. Well, luckily we are at a time that most of the stations have their content on YouTube, but that's not to say that it's necessarily the rules of the road. It is probably getting to be best practice, and a lot of stations have that there. Again, where I came out of Hingham, and prior to Hingham I was in Brockton, I was also in where was that before that? Weymouth, and I went to school at Bridgewater, now State University, State College when I was there, and I interned at the local station down there. They've all got a presence of video online. Some are through YouTube, some are through Vimeo or other competing services, but most of them have their content online. And what we hope to do, and I'm changing hats for a minute to that mass access group that I'm part of, as we band together on a state level and even on a regional and national level, which I'm involved with those groups as well, we're trying to kind of bring people to that, so that if maybe you live in Whitman Hanson, but you work in Whitman or Hanson and you work in Abington, you might care about that content and you'd like to be able to quickly find that content. And so we hope that places like this massaccess.org website will help and point people to these other surrounding communities and how they can get involved in their community or community they work in or spend a lot of time in, maybe have a summer home in, something like that.
That makes really, really good sense because people do summer here and summer there. Speaking of that, you're talking about people coming to the studio and taking cameras. They could physically, once trained, take a camera and film an event, we'll say in Onset Beach,
right,
that they were doing, and put that content or the filming, so to speak, for the average person.
Yep.
Because that's when we say content, that's what we're talking about.
It could be anything, right?
It could be anything, and they could bring that possibly to Whitman Hanson Community Access.
Not only that,
edit it.
Yeah. Exactly, and we also bring in some content from other towns as well, because, for example, we've talked a couple of times about our show Painting with Danielle. Well, maybe we want to include that in another sort of cultural, arts and entertainment type of hour of programming. We want to round that out, so we might look for other similar programming from communities around us. We belong to a repository group through that group Mass Access that allows us to share content. So we can pull content down from other towns, or we can post our content and share it out to get outside of Whitman and Hanson as well. We do a show, Buzz Around Bees, and I hear that's been playing even out in California. There's been cities and towns out there and points between here and there that have downloaded that content just because it's interesting. And it's not necessarily restrictive that it's only interesting in Whitman or Hanson. It's interesting anywhere. It's just some neat content. So yes, we can also film content or events and things that are happening in other communities that might be related or of interest to people in Whitman or Hanson. I think the only challenge we might have, and we could probably address most of these on a case-by-case basis, is I think just due to insurance purposes, the cameras and equipment can't leave Massachusetts. But we can always look at the requests on a more individual basis and see what we can work around. Advertisers,
I know I've had people question about, can we do advertisements? Can we take on advertisers? What role does that play?
So as a 501c3 nonprofit, and by the terms of our agreements with the communities, we do have to be non-commercial in nature. So there is still opportunities that are out there for things like underwriting and sponsorship and things like that. But we really have to stay away from things like calls to action or comparative speak and things like that. To say that my tire prices are 10% better than my competitors or something like that. We'd have to stay out of things like that. But otherwise we could certainly say that this program is brought to you by ABC Pizza Joint or something like that, and those opportunities exist, and there can be discussion about rates and things that would exist for that type of opportunity.
What about, like, for instance, I know Damien's in Hanson and McGuigan's in Whitman run these 5K races. Does the cable, Whitman Hanson Cable, go and film some of that stuff, or could a person come in, be trained, take a camera out, and go physically film that type of content, so to speak, and bring it back and edit it and then have it play? I think that's exactly. Does that stay within the realm of, without breaking any rules?
No, that's exactly the vision. Just the fact that this is put on by, a lot of these events have sponsors, and it's going to be what it is. We're there to cover it, and even at the end of the day, they are a sponsor. A lot of times, what we'll do if we're covering it as a staff type production is we'll want to be the media sponsor, and we'd like to get a little bit of opportunity to market ourselves and our opportunities, just like you and I are discussing now, and we're hoping that people are listening and expressing interest. So yeah, that's the vision, is that people will come in, they'll take out the camera equipment and they'll film that. They can then come in, book time to edit and do the post-production work or the editing to put that together and get it on the channel. As a staff, we try to cover things like that when we can, but again, to divide our resources, about the half dozen of us, to get us to be where we need to be at all these given times and cover everything over any week. It's best if we can find someone that's interested and, you know, somewhat related to the event going on or interested in the event going on to try and, you know, bring that through the stages of production.
Well, as we were talking about earlier and discussing, it's something that's going to have some training, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you or I, Kevin Tocci, I know does a lot of shows, have to be sitting there and narrating the whole event.
Right.
Where a person could just come with the camera, use the camera, and if they wanted to, I mean, I'm sure the cameras have some sort of microphones attached.
That's it.
They could, from time to time, jump right in and narrate it, or they could bring someone with them that wanted to do it, such as we've done with Carol at the Hanson Christmas event that's done the tree lighting ceremony or whatever. She comes down and brings a camera. So it's as easy, you can do as much as you want to do or as little as you want to do.
That's it.
And I want to keep trying to hammer that, because some people get into it has to be longer. Does it have to be a half-hour shoot? Does it have to be?
You know, we that's certainly the time slot that we try to program things within, which is to say that we like to start programming on the hour and half hour. But no, I mean, we can jump back to the community bulletin board, which is those still images that play and promote community events and things like that in between programming. So we, you know, we'll take anything, and if it spills over, it becomes 31, 32 minutes. I mean, it's too bad, because we lose the next 28 minutes probably that we won't want to play something unless we decide to do a quarter-hour thing like that. But, you know, really, we're going to take any content in. And if we can aggregate that, again, with similar things and, you know, make it part of a sort of a tapestry of shorter events, we can always do that too. So if we have a handful of 5 to 7 minute events, we'll you know, weave that together and maybe create something out of that.
No, another very informative thing that you talked about, and you mentioned it, a lot of people don't use it because they don't understand how to use it. The message board. If you have something as easy as saying it's John Smith's birthday, he's 40 years old today.
Happy birthday, John.
Happy birthday, John.
Yeah.
They can just send that to the Dropbox
well, not
on
even that.
South Ave?
Well, they could do that, but we've also, that's been one of the things we've integrated into this new website. There's actually a place to click right into, type your message in. You can even upload imagery to go along with that, and hit the submit button, and it comes right to us. And then we can do the creative side and put that right into the program to be played.
What about community events? I know that people love to promote community events, and when you use media, or you use Facebook, or you use YouTube, as we've said, but it's very, very easy to use Whitman Hanson Cable Access to do and promote an event. How would someone go about that?
I would say this. I think not just is it easy to use our services and then, you know, to tailor that to match in with Facebook and other methods like that. If somebody reaches out early enough and we can get that content created, make that bulletin board slide. I don't know about you, but I've gotten to the point with my Facebook feed that if there's not an image or video with it, I just keep scrolling. So one of the best things we can do is just to put a graphic there, make that bulletin board image be what you post on Facebook, and we can help with that.
Great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, we're coming to the end of the show, and we hope that we've given you some important information in how to use Whitman Hanson Community Access, because it's a giant tool. It's great. It's something that you pay for through your cable bill. We want you to use it. As Eric just said, he's the new director and he wants you to come down to South Ave. Even if you just come in and say hello and see what's going on in the station, it's important that you get involved with your communities. My name's Bob Hayes, and if you need to contact me, my email address is bobhayes4433@gmail.com, or you can call me on my cell phone at 617-538-0189. We hope we've been a help. Until next time, watch Whitman Hanson Community Access.